Welcome to Entering the Darkness podcast. This is Colin. Unfortunately, my co-host could not make it tonight, but don't worry, I've got this all taken care of. We got to do it for the metal. I have the legendary, the man, the myth, Scott Danough from formerly of Bleeding Through, currently of The Suffering. Awesome guitar player, probably just a legend in my own, in his own right, I believe. And of course, the Orange County scene, the California scene, everything like that. So, Scott, introduce yourself to everybody.
Yeah, my name's Scott. I've been around, done some stuff. Played in Bleeding Through. After that, I moved up to the Bay Area and kind of went through a whole laundry list of other smaller projects. And here I am now. I'm doing the Suffering and kind of going full swing with that. Well, as full swing as I can get because I've got a family now, like career outside of music that you know that kind of pays the bills a lot better than music does. So
There you go. And of course, I mean, again, as I told you right before we started doing this, of course, it's definitely awesome that you said, that you said yes to coming out here, man. Really, really love that. It's just really cool. You've been one of those. I've been following your music for years, and so it's kind of like I was like, man, maybe he might try to come on here. Let's see, let's see if we can get him on. And it's really cool. It's really cool that you did. I remember the very first time I ever actually saw like a video of you guys or whatever it was. It was Hellfest 2002. My singer from
wow.
my old high school band had it, and you guys were playing. I can't remember even what song it was, but it was like I saw it and I was like, "Holy shit, these guys are freaking good!" You know what I mean? Because I was like, I'd never heard like a metalcore band like that had like the keyboards and everything else like that aside from like Chimera or something like that. But it was just kind of like all of a sudden I'm like, dude, they're incorporating these keyboards. It's got this weird haunting sound to it. I'm like, this is freaking cool. I'm like, he's playing a freaking BC Rich. What the fuck, man? This is so cool. you know?
Yeah, I mean,
And
see, I'm still playing the BC Rich. I mean, I've got my Ibanez, but those were all custom guitars that I had to,
mhm,
now that I don't
mhm,
have endorsements anymore.
mhm,
And those guitars are worth quite a bit of money. So like now
mhm,
I've decided to just kind of dial things back a little bit for the live show, like in terms of like the, how expensive basically if anything were to happen, I want something that I can replace and something that
mhm,
I know I can set up to have it sound great. And
mhm.
that means, that's where I'm at right now with the BC Rich.
Right on. And obviously you starting out in the OC scene and everything like that down in Orange County, like 18 Visions, Throwdown, all those guys. I mean, like what prompted the whole scene? I mean, obviously you having been from there, like what started the whole thing? Because I mean, you would never think something like this would come out of a beach town like that, like Huntington and all those places.
Well, I mean, so the Orange County scene has been around way longer than like any of those bands.
Hmm.
You know, it it kind of started, I mean, back to the OG days of hardcore with, bands like Black Flag. Granted, they weren't, an Orange County band, but they played a lot around the area. There was TSOL from the area, the
Hmm.
Adolescents. Um, it was a little before my time. I started going to shows around like 88. Yeah, but 80, I think 88 was my first show.
Hmm.
And around that time, and there was quite a few bands that like I wish I had seen back then, but I was still fairly young. I was like 15, 16. I was living in the Inland Empire,
Hmm.
so getting around. It wasn't always the easiest for me. I had to rely on friends that wanted to go to see shows. But I remember going to see bands like back in the day, like God, I mean, you used to see like people like Gwen Stefani at hardcore shows. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
um, Zach De La Rocha was in Hard Stance and he was in Inside Out. Like those are people you would see like just going to shows and watching the bands that were playing, and you know it's just weird to see like how that's kind of grown. It's always been like that. It's always been like a constant of these key players that just ended up going on to do huge things.
Hmm.
Um, and after like multiple generations, then I guess the first band really to start doing stuff from the generation you're speaking of was 18 Visions.
18
They
Visions. Okay.
and I mean I don't know how far back you've heard some of their older stuff, but like they
Hmm.
were a very different band. They were
Hmm.
very heavy, like very heavy. They were kind of like I guess lack of a better word, they were kind of like the problem child of Orange County. Like, they were the first ones really, but they also had a lot of like violence and stuff going on at their shows, crew affiliations and stuff like that. And at first that kind of bummed me out. Then I started getting to know all those guys a little better because I'd been around longer than some of them, I guess. Um, and it just ended up like, whoa, these guys are actually fucking cool dudes. Like
Mhm.
we all started getting along. I remember one time, I saw Brandon. I don't know if he was singing for Throwdown or he was singing, did a song with somebody, and
Mhm.
I was like, "Fuck, man, that kid can fucking growl!" Like, and um, I remember approaching him like not long after that, saying, "Hey, dude, like, let's, maybe we should do a band."
Mhm.
Um, and I don't think he really thought anything of it at the time, other than like, he might have been like kind of like more, I guess, prompted to get back to me on that by
Okay.
he was really into one of the older bands that I was doing, this band called Refuge.
Refuge.
We
Okay.
started out in the early '90s,
Hmm.
and basically we were just like an integrity worship band. Like we loved integrity, and like a lot of Cleveland hardcore stuff. And I remember a good story. So when Brandon was 14, he ended up stealing his dad's girlfriend's car at the time, BMW,
Uh-huh.
driving from Newport Beach all the way out to Redlands. I don't know if you know the proximity of it,
Redlands.
but
Hmm.
yeah. He went to go see he stole the car to go see my band play. I never knew that until years later, and yeah, I guess that might have been one of the things that kind of prompted him to take me seriously when I hit him up about that.
Hmm.
But one thing led to another. He ended up calling me up. He's like, "Hey man, like I know these two dudes that really want to play. Um, and we kind of want to do something more like like the Swarm, Left for Dead, and so we started playing. We did this band. It was called Breakneck at first.
Hmm. Oh
Um,
yeah. Yep.
yeah,
I
and it
remember
was
hearing about
very
that.
it was very like Throwdown meets like Left for Dead.
Hmm.
Um, just like fast, like basic like chug hardcore stuff.
Right. Almost
Um,
like Beatdown or no? Hmm.
well, I mean, sort of yes and sort of no.
Hmm.
It was more like chaotic too. It had
Okay.
like beat down, breakdown parts,
Hmm.
with like faster, more chaotic stuff, like
Ooh.
a lot of that going on.
Hmm.
Um, and so the other two guys that he had in mind were Chad and Troy from Taken.
Hmm.
Um, so we started the band with them. Javier from 18 Visions was playing too. That's when he was playing guitar, Chad was playing bass, and eventually it just kind of started to fizzle out. Like there was a couple of weird tensions in the band. Um,
Hmm.
nothing too serious, but like it just ended up like we wanted to play faster metal stuff, and
Hmm.
so we decided to just not do that band anymore and started bleeding through.
There you go. Cool. That's
Um,
awesome. Mhm.
yeah, it was looking back at all of it now, like it was really exciting because it was so much drastically different than anything all of us were doing before then.
Hmm.
And I guess it was kind of the challenge of it. Like, fuck, can we play like fast metal stuff like this?
Right.
And a lot of people, in the early days thought we were really kind of ripping off like at the gates and the whole Swedish Gothenburg sound.
Hmm.
And all of us were listening to more like Suffocation, Cannibal Corpse, Morbid Angel.
Hmm.
I was listening to a lot of Cryptopsy.
Hmm.
So that was like a lot of like the early influences.
Mm. Very good stuff. And it's like, that's a really, really awesome history, man, that you get right there for sure. I mean, it's definitely, and the one thing I got to ask too is like, what exactly prompted the name Leading Through? I mean, who came up with that?
Brandon came
Hmm.
up with that. It was,
Came up with that?
it like it. At the time, I don't really know that it had any specific meaning
Hmm.
because there was a couple of names that were thrown around. I think Hemlock Society was one of them, which
Hmm.
ended up becoming a song title. Um,
Yep.
I think like there was some other thing like oh god, what was the other one? I can't remember. Anyway,
Hmm.
like so we all decided like oh, bleeding through that just sounds kind of cool, like you
Hmm.
and it ended up sticking, and we ended up staying with that.
Hmm.
The rest is history, I guess.
There you go. That's cool, man. And it's like, you know, let's see, what is it? Oh yeah, I remember like there was a show that I attended in was it I want to say like way down in San Diego. 18 Visions was there. But like when I got to the show, right? Bleeding Through posters were all over the venue. And then I remember
Wow.
I'm like standing in the venue, I'm standing in line waiting, and I'm just kind of like, okay, they're like, who are you here to see? I'm like, well, 18V and all this stuff. They're like, dude, check out Bleeding Through. I'm like, why? They're like, dude, they're gonna be here like next week. I'm like, what? I'm like, okay. I'm like, what's cool? He's like, they're like, no, dude, trust me, Bleeding Through. I'm like, why? They're like, that's where it's at, man. That's where it's at. You know what I mean? And then and of course that's what and then I went home, I went back to Michigan like about a week or so after that show. And then my vocalist for my band in high school brought over that DVD that I told you about for
Okay.
the 2002 Health Fest thing. And that's when I saw you guys and I was like, holy shit. These guys are freaking so freaking good. And then and then that was when This Is Love, This Is Murderous had come out and everything like that. And then I bought that, bought that album and I was just like totally blown away by it. Could not stop listening to it. You know what I
That
mean?
record is such a mess too. Like,
Was it? Hmm.
I mean, looking back at it, I'm proud of what we did and the time that we
Hmm.
had to do it in. But like, it was a real chaotic mess to do it because we. So we, I ended up, talking a lot with Mike Gitter from Roadrunner Records at that around that time. And
Hmm.
he'd thrown out a couple of names for producers and stuff, and Ulrich Wild was one of them. I
Hmm.
got in touch with Ulrich and told him, "Hey, Mike Gitter gave me your contact info, and he thought that you would be a good fit for this, and I just kind of wanted to feel you out and see where you're at with it." And
Hmm.
it all ended up working out, but that poor guy, man, he ended up because of a deadline.
Hmm.
We ended up we weren't even finished writing everything yet, so we've written about half of the record. The other songs were kind of written, but we didn't really have the time to work with them that we should have.
Hmm.
So half of the record was just kind of like done in this 2 week period of like pre-production
Hmm.
before we ended up going to the studio to record it.
Got it.
And so
Okay.
like I feel like the song structures kind of suffered a little bit from that. Yeah, I'm looking back at it. I can tell like by listening to like the record, half of it sounds like it was fairly well thought out, like well, a lot better thought out, I guess, than the rest of the songs.
Okay.
And you can tell which ones those are. I mean, obviously, like the ones that ended up becoming singles.
Right.
Oddly enough, that first song, "Love Lost," uh, I had a lot of those riffs written already, and we
Hmm.
ended up writing that song in Every Time I Die's basement where they practice because we
Oh,
got we got barred from going into Canada.
oh, what?
Yeah. Oh man, you didn't know that? Yeah. So
No.
that's another good story. So we were told that we had the green light to go in, right?
Uh-huh.
We had the work permits all settled out. That's what we were told.
Uh-huh.
We get up to the border and it was a different story. And then so we all started like trying to like on the spot come up with this bullshit lie. And we were all pretty much on the same page with the lie, like,
Mhm.
but they ended up catching us anyway.
Oh no.
They said that we couldn't be in the country making what we were making. I don't know. It was some really stupid excuse, right? Like it all boiled down to money and stuff. And it's like, dude, we're not really making anything. Like, why do you guys care so much about this?
Right.
And oh, dude. So we were stuck at the border for like probably 12 hours
Oh no.
being detained. They were like, I ended up getting up out of my seat and like, which probably wasn't the best mistake because the guy that was the border officer in charge of the whole situation, I don't know if he was having a bad day or if he was just a shitty dude or what, but like,
Mhm.
I got up out of my seat and I said, hey, what kind of trouble are we looking at? He picks up a phone book and throws it at me and says, call an immigration lawyer.
Oh
It's like,
man.
okay. And I went and he's all, get back in your seat. And I'm like, all right, whatever. Like, I'm not trying to get like stranded up here in a Canadian jail cell. So
Right. Exactly.
they
Oh
banned us from
man.
going into the country for a year.
Mm,
And then we were told by our booking agent a year later that we'd had the green light to go in again. That, oh, well, yeah, don't worry, any legality problems, it's all on pass. Like we got everything worked out. Sure enough, nope. So we ended up getting banned again. Um, it was a lot easier to get out at that time. Like the guy was a lot cooler and stuff, but yeah, he just turned us around and said, "Yeah, just don't come back. You got it. We're not
yeah.
coming back."
Oh man. For
Um,
Canada. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, and but anyway, yeah, that's how Love Lost was written. Like we got banned from going in, so we had to stay at Every Time I Die's house while they were on tour.
Hmm.
Their roommates said, "Yeah, you guys just hang out here, do what you can," and like that's what we did.
There you go. Cool, man. That's really, that's so, sounds like you guys had a lot of different adventures early on in there,
Oh my
a lot of
god,
different
man!
things.
Like adventures, a lot of struggles, a lot of sacrifices.
Hmm.
Um,
There you go.
yeah, a lot of good times too, but it was just like a constant roller coaster
Right on.
ride.
Yeah, I would imagine. So, like, what also the whole trust kill thing? Like, what brought that about? Like, how'd you guys get found by Josh Grabell, I believe it was? Is the founder of
Well,
it? Hmm.
yeah, so 18 Visions was already on the label. They
Hmm.
were already putting records out. And I remember like he was looking at signing, there was two potential bands that he wanted to sign. And that
Hmm.
was us and Undying. He wanted
Undying.
some kind of metalcore band, on the label. And I remember like, you know, Brandon's like, and I can't speak for myself any better because my anxiety is fucking terrible too. But like, I think his anxiety was getting the best of him, and he was like, "Dude, we got to just hurry up and sign these contracts, man. Like, and just get something out before he ends up signing Undying, and then like, you know, then you know, it was kind of like one of those things where he wanted us to be like the first band that was playing that kind of music on the label. I think
Hmm.
he was kind of worried, and at that point, also, we were getting just so much pressure from like everybody, like people that were managing us, people that were like um, kind of advising us that weren't in a manager position, but like were kind of like trying to help us out. And it's just weird, like how that kind of pressure, like whether it's intentional or not, like they kind of pit you against your friends, and like none of us were really looking at this as something that we were like you know, feeling competitive or like ill will toward anybody at all,
Hmm.
especially our friends. I mean, come on, man. But, there was that pressure where, like, if he signs Undying, they're the ones that are going to end up getting like the best marketing and blah, blah, blah. Like, they're going to take priority over you guys on the label. And so I feel like somehow that got into like our heads, and we ended up rushing into the contract without really looking it over the way that we should. We had no
Hmm.
merge rights. It was basically a really shitty contract. Um, and at that point, I mean, we also weren't thinking like like that we were going to be successful at all either. Because I mean, really, like at that point, what bands like us were going to be successful? Like in
Hmm.
our minds anyway. Um, and it ended up becoming exactly that. We were doing way better than we thought we were, to the point where we really had to tell him, hey, we need to renegotiate our contract.
Hmm.
This is not working out for us. And we did. And then and that was even before the drama that they had when I left the band, when they weren't getting shit for budget for like declaration and stuff. You know, there was a period of about a year where we didn't really speak much, and that was during when they were going through all that drama with Trustkill.
Hmm.
And I remember reading stuff about that, just thinking like I feel bad for them, but fuck, I'm glad I'm not on that ship anymore.
Hmm.
Um, and and then like seeing how quickly they got out of that whole trust kill thing, like they fulfilled their 3 record commitment to them and just said, "Fuck this, we're out," which was absolutely the right move. Like, why would you want to go back to that?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, a lot of like, I mean, I guess I probably don't want to go too much into specifics on the whole
Right.
situation, but
That's cool.
wow, just wow.
Yeah, I would imagine. And it's, it, although, you guys were still able to put out some good music. I mean, I'm really sorry to hear that, of course, the contract wasn't exactly what it would have been, what you were hoping it would have been, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But, but at least,
but it was the right
you
move.
still have to look. Yeah.
It was still the right move at the right time.
Mhm.
Like, I
Mhm.
mean, you know, who's to say that we would have done better anywhere else, and who's to say that we would have done worse than anybody else, anywhere else? It just worked out.
Mhm.
I think for us, the best that it could have at that moment. Like, it was at the moment, it was definitely the right move. I think.
And with now that you were, I know there's like it was a few years back. I remember seeing that you had gone on a tour with Bleeding Through one last time there. I can't remember like how far back that was. You like the last tour that you did with them. When was
That
it?
was so. I got the call in early 2013, right
That's right.
when they announced that they were breaking up. Um, they wanted to go and they were going to do a Europe tour, and they wanted me to do that with them. Like, Brandon
Hmm.
called me up, said, "Hey man, we want you to go on tour with us. Like, we want to do this right, and like, you know, bring back as much of that lineup as we can."
Hmm.
And I said, "All right, well, let me give me some time to think about this, and see what I can do in terms of where I'm at with work and whatnot." And I ended up talking to who I needed to, got the go ahead to where, like, I could take the time off, and I ended up calling back, said, "Yeah, you know what, I'll do it." And then it ended up like just kind of at that point, we were getting interviews in Europe, and um, I remember, I did a couple specific interviews, and um, Brandon would be sitting behind me or whatnot. And for they asked me, "Well, so are you going to do all the tours?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, man. Like, I haven't been asked to." And Brandon kind of looked over at me, going, "Yeah." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess I'm doing them all." And it ended up like that. And then like um, it ended up being, I guess, at that point, I guess, considered an official member of the band again.
Hmm.
All the social media like pages and stuff, and that they'd updated it to my name being back on the roster and everything.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then so we finished it out doing what we were doing,
Definitely.
trying to give people the best that we could at that point.
That's gotta be so freaking cool, though. I mean, to be all around Europe like that. I mean, to get all these people just going completely crazy over that shit.
It was fun. It was fun. I mean, the first few times that we went to Europe, like when long before I left the band the first time, like
Mm.
there were some brutal tours.
Hmm.
Like when you go to a place, like Europe, you don't go there very often, so you're trying to take advantage of that and cram as much time in as possible. So we were doing these brutal 6 week runs over there,
Hmm. Oh.
and then when it wasn't 6 weeks, I remember off of the truth. I think that's or no, it might have been right before that. No, it was, now I remember, we were recording the truth, and we started booking shows in Japan and Australia. Then we ended up like, it basically was us flying around the entire globe. Um,
Dang.
yeah, we did Japan, then we did Australia, then we flew from Australia to Europe, got home for maybe a week, and then we ended up doing like the whole US again. Like, and half of that tour was like 2 weeks of work tour. And that was like, and like I said, we'd we were still in the middle of recording the truth. So then we got back, you know, it was right back in the studio, and it was just like, wow, like it got really busy. Um, it was kind of a lot to handle at that moment too.
I'm sure. Yeah, definitely. But it's like I, it's that's still I can't even believe that you got to play like in like Australia, Japan, places like that. I mean, it's like I know that Australia has a lot of some some pretty interesting metal and hardcore scene there. I mean, obviously the most popular one as we know is Parkway Drive, um but I mean it's like I've seen some pretty interesting things there. So I mean to be able to play there, I mean those crowds had to have been crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, we took Parkway
Mhm.
Drive out on one of those tours, and like, you know, I'm never gonna say like, we were the reason they got bigger, but I mean like they like after that tour, like I just kept hearing their name more and more and more,
Mhm.
and then they were just this huge band. Like it was insane, and good for them, man. They were the nicest dudes. Like if there's anybody that really truly deserved it, it's those guys.
Mhm. Oh man.
They had a strong work ethic. They worked really hard. They were good at what they did, and they were just genuinely nice guys.
Right on. Right on. Well, now, I mean, obviously knowing that you are now in the band of Suffering, I mean, like, what brought you to that?
It's like so. The last band I was doing in 2017, I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. There was a lot of um, a lot of disagreements over the direction of the band, and I just said, you know what, like I'm done. You guys, this is your band now. Do what you want with it.
Mhm.
And at that point, I was just kind of like, you know, I had stopped drinking. Um, I was really getting my head on straight again. Um, yeah, the last drink I took, I think was, and it's weird because I never really considered myself as somebody with a problem, uh,
Mhm.
and I don't think that I did because like really the last year or so before I stopped, I really drank it all. And I
Mhm.
remember the last drink I took was the last show that we did. I ended up like I've been living like I was straight edge since then. October 7th in 2017, and and now like I said, I at that point just decided like I don't really care. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Like like write music or play music, and I was fine with it. Like for most of that time. And then when the pandemic came along, you know, I I also was like doubling down on that. Like, man, I don't want to be around people anymore at this point.
Mhm.
Like when the pandemic was brand new, I was like, no, no, going to shows just doesn't sound like where I want to be at right now.
Mhm.
It wasn't until this friend of mine, and sadly, we're not even friends anymore. He ended up giving me like this little practice amp for my room. Um,
Mhm.
and I started playing again. I was like really getting into it. I'm like, yeah, all right, I kind of miss this. I
Mhm.
still had all my stage equipment too. And he would bug me all the time, like, dude, play for my band, play for my band. Um, and that ended up falling apart. We all got into a like kind of a weird disagreement. You know, um, there was some substance abuse going on with one of the guys. So it basically turned into when I left that band, everybody else kind of left at the same time. And then everybody else kind of started gravitating toward me at that point, wanting to do something new. And that's basically how the suffering started.
Right on.
Um, it was just like I got really because with that other band, the whole sound of the band was like the Boss HM2 chainsaw tone.
Okay. Yep.
And I think that's one of the things also that really kind of gave me a renewed interest in playing again. Was that it was so drastically different from the tone that I was using before,
Mhm.
and it was exciting to me because it was so new, and it still is exciting. So now I'm still like writing a lot of music. Um, the band is completely different now, like in terms of lineup. It's just me and the singer left with we ended up, our guitar player just left. He was the last one to leave because he's been doing, two or three bands at the same time. Um, so now we're a four piece again. Um, we ended up we're working with a new drummer who used to play in that band Wolf King. I don't know if you remember them. They were on
Okay.
Prosthetic Records. Yeah, he played with that band for a while. And then our new bass player, he played in this band called Garo, and he's just one of the local guys that books shows around this area, around the Bay Area. And I was just like, you know what, let's try Dre out on bass, man. And he's like, it just ended up working. It worked out awesome. So here we are now, four piece. Now that we've finally got things solidified, we line up. Um,
Mhm.
I think we're going to get through the next couple shows that we got to play, and then probably start writing again. Um, discuss like if we want to keep working with protagonists who we put the record out with, which
Mhm.
I'm all for. I love Brendan. He's treated us awesome since we started,
Mhm.
and yeah, I guess I mean there's a lot of decisions to be made, and like we got to get the game plan rolling again.
Okay. Definitely. That's really awesome, dude. And it's like, oh man, that's it's gotta feel awesome to be back in a band again. I haven't been in one in like 10 years, but 11 years, whatever that is, because it's just been one of those things that, and my personal, my own personal thing is that
Yeah,
it's just kind of, I've, I don't want to play other people's music anymore.
I can relate to that so good. Yeah,
Yep. And it's just like because I'd been in so many bands before, like even when I was living in the Philippines, and I was like in so many different bands where I'm like, but dude, none of this is mine. None of this is mine. Basically people are just kind of like, people are just like, oh, just put a bass line on this. I'm like, huh?
yeah, dude, I feel that deep in my soul, man. Because like I really feel like because like I've said, I didn't really miss it while I was away from it.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I got that little practice amp from that buddy of mine and I started realizing like I really miss this, but I think the thing I miss most about it that makes me miss it so much is the creativity.
Hmm.
Like I don't when I play guitar, and I've always been like this. I never really played to learn other people's stuff, to learn techniques
Hmm.
or any of that. It was always just like I wanna play shit that I would want to hear,
Hmm. Well,
and
definitely.
that's it's kind of driven me creatively, and that's where I've been.
And so
Hold on.
actually, one thing I wanted to ask you too, like what got you really into the guitar? Like why the guitar? Why not anything else?
It's interesting because when I started playing music, I was more leaning toward probably trying to play drums. My grandfather was a drummer.
Hmm.
He was really into jazz, and he was in a polka band with his brother.
Oh.
Yeah, they put a record out. It was like I think in the 50s or the 60s when they put that out.
Hmm.
Um, I've got a copy of it somewhere. But anyway, so I remember being a kid. I would go over to his house with my mom, and
Hmm.
we would play. He'd play like his drums, and then he'd let me play on his drums too. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. When you're
Hmm.
that young, dude, and you're playing on something like that after seeing your grandfather, who you kind of idolize,
Hmm.
you're like, oh, this feels fucking awesome.
Hmm.
Um, and then it was around that time because, like I said, I was really young. Then I got into about seventh grade, um, and everything changed. I was kind of getting more into music. I got into bands like, when I was in elementary school, I was really into Kiss. Like that was my big thing. Then I remember when I got into junior high school, um, seeing the like I don't know if you remember Venom.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I remember seeing like kids with, and it wasn't like this was before battle vests, you know what I mean? But like they used to get this grease paint and paint their own battle vests, but not cutting the sleeves off because I lived in upstate New York, so it was
Hmm.
cold as fuck there, and that was in like 80, 84, and
Hmm.
these this there was a couple of kids that had like the Venom black metal thing they painted on the back of their vest on their
Hmm.
jackets.
Hmm.
And I remember I ended up getting to be friends with them. I'm like, dude, can you paint one for me? I ended up, paying them to paint me one on my jacket. And like, other friends of mine were constantly giving me tapes of stuff like, these mixed tapes that they were making for me with like Venom, Slayer, like all the early thrash bands, like Possessed,
Hmm.
and a lot of like kind of crossover hardcore too, like DRI,
Ooh,
GBH,
beautiful.
and that just like fucked my life up in the best way.
Mhm.
Like, I just went down the rabbit hole and just never looked back. I went fucking nuts with it to the point where like, dude, I was probably the worst student in school
Mhm.
just because all I wanted to do was play music, man. I just wanted to play
Same.
music and like skateboard.
Same. It was basically high school for me too. That's all I ever wanted to do. I didn't really care about anything else. It was
Yeah.
just like,
And I remember like, so yeah, at that time, like I said, man, early
Mhm.
80s, um, they weren't really, especially in like small towns in like, fucking mountain town, upstate New York.
Okay, guys, we are back here once again. Dan looks like he actually was able to come in, and so it looks as if we're going to be good to go from here. Um, Dan, since you got in here, is there anything you want to ask Scott? Mhm.
Scott, thank you for joining us
You're
tonight.
welcome, man.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I always ask everybody this question, and it's going to be somewhat hard, somewhat easy to narrow it down to
All
one.
right.
Your days out on the road. Give me one incident that comes to mind where something happened and you're like, this is going to be a shit show. That one thing that happened where everything just went wrong going up to playing the show.
There's so many of those instances, but the one that really comes to mind was the van accident that was all over the news. It made it on our DVD. It made it on Inside Edition, like Maury Povich. It was fucking wild, man. Like, so yeah, that was. We were all set to get back on the road. We were out with Soil Work, Chimera, and As I Lay Dying. And I remember we all woke up early that morning to get out on the road and make the next show on time. Um, and we hit Highway 80, the infamous Kiss of Death freeway at that time of year. As soon as we started going down the hill, you could feel something wasn't right. You could feel the van start moving in a way that it shouldn't have been moving. And that was the oh shit moment for me. Like Debo was driving, he was like, I think we're on black ice. Like, and we all just like, and he looks back and goes, everybody hold on. I'm like, fuck. It's because most of us were in the back not wearing seatbelts because we'd taken out like the first bench so we could, sleep while we're driving and stuff. Man, we are just spinning and spinning. And what was probably like, 30, 40 seconds tops felt like a fucking half an hour, dude. It was just, yeah. And I'd been in car accidents before, like, you know, oddly enough, never one that I was driving in, but I've been in serious car accidents. And that one just felt like, uh-oh, this is going to be far worse than anything I've been in. And I'd been in an accident years previous to that where I broke my neck. Um, yeah, that's a whole other story. But yeah, I did break my neck in a car accident. Um, and I just remember thinking like, fuck, man, like I'm on black ice. This is far different than that other accident. Like this is not going to end well. Fortunately, I mean, I'm sure you saw the footage of that. We hit another car that had flipped over. Fortunately, that guy was okay too, and he was still okay even after we hit his car, well, his truck. He was driving a little pickup, and then like that was the thing that saved us from tipping over was hitting that other vehicle. So after we hit it and we finally stopped, we get out, like you could see the trailer like it just bust open like a fucking, like a box that somebody put fireworks in and just like blew up. There was equipment all over the freeway, and then the reality kind of sunk in, like, oh, there's other cars sliding on this shit, and it was just like a shooting gallery of cars.
Oh,
Yeah, we saw one car, like there was a Jeep that went over the other side. Those people had to be airlifted out because the embankment dropped off so far, and I guess one of them didn't make it. From what I understand, yeah, it, it was it was an experience like that I'd probably never want to relive. Which is funny because, like, you know, almost what 10 years to the date after that, like we were not on the same stretch of road, but in the same circumstance when I went back for the when I went back to Bleeding Through to help them do the farewell tour in the U.S. and we hit black ice again, somewhere in, I think, Texas we were in, and I remember that one. I was sleeping because we had one of those Cruise America event, like the RVs, and I was sleeping. I was one of the few that didn't get a bunk, so I'm sleeping on the bench in the little lounge room. And the funny thing is, again, Derek was driving, that poor fucking dude, and I hear him go, "Hold on," and I like instantly knew, like, oh shit, here we go again.
no.
Yeah, I'm still groggy, like, half asleep, and I remember we came down, right, and then like we slid and then came down and went through this embankment in between the two lanes, and for some reason it was almost like a half pipe, and we came back around and we got airborne when we came back out of it, and we still ended up landing on the wheels and spun around. The trailer was pretty fucked up, but like we were able to like salvage the equipment, throw it in the back, um, and finish it out that last. It was right before the last show of that tour.
Damn, that highway is cursed.
Well, it was a different highway, but
Oh,
it was the same circumstances. You know what I mean? Like the black ice and just that time of year, man. Like I don't think a lot of people understand like what some bands are putting at risk when they go out on tour at that time of
Oh,
year.
for sure. For sure. I've heard some
almost
different
makes you
stories
kind of
too.
go back. Of course, everybody knows what happened to Cliff Burton and Metallica, but that
Yeah.
happened, I believe, over in Denmark or Sweden, somewhere out there. But there's really a lot that you guys go through it out on the road because you're not everybody's flying Learjet everywhere like the Rolling Stones.
No.
There's a lot of travel and stuff that happens in between.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't make Rolling Stones money. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't think anybody at this point would feel like Rolling Stones money.
no, I mean, Rolling Stones might not even be making that. Well, yeah, sure they are. They're the Rolling Stones, but still, man, like it's just a lot, man. Like you got to think about like things like I remember even saying like before that tour, like, dude, are we sure we want to go out again and doing this? And we all thought like, well, because what we were always told by like bus drivers when we started riding in buses, right? So like they were like, well, the wheelbase is a lot less likely for you to be spinning out on black ice. You're going to be probably a lot safer on a wheelbase like that. And so we were like, all right, like, let's, and that, I guess the wheelbase wasn't quite long enough to save us from black ice, but yeah, it was fucking
That's
weird.
crazy because I was in high school. What would that have been, my sophomore or junior year? And I remember waking up, eating breakfast, and Inside Edition popped on. It's funny you say Inside Edition. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, what happened to Bleeding Through? And it was like, wow. I'm not going to say it was cool, but it was so cool because I was able to look over at my boomer mom that always is about the music and be like, see, it's one of my bands on TV, even though
Yeah,
it wasn't good. Yeah,
looking
wow.
back at
How
it now,
fast that
kind of,
traveled.
but at the time it was like, holy fuck, man. Like, we realized like, dude, we almost died. But it's I guess things where like, you don't really get a cool story unless there's something at risk, or it's always got to be some extreme. That's where the coolest stories kind of come from. And that was for sure, yeah, a definite extreme. Um,
Mm.
Good exposure, but not good exposure on the fact that
yeah,
the premise of it that almost makes you want to go back to your label and say, "Hey, all that paid promotion in the front, yeah, we just got the biggest one."
you're
Yeah.
right, right. And
Oh yeah.
it was just weird because, like, you know, it was I don't even know how to really explain it. It was just one of those situations that really made us think long and hard about how we're going to tour from that point on. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, we all decided at that point, like, okay, no more winter tours in a band.
Mhm.
That's we're done doing that.
Yeah, yeah, the
Like
winter tours.
even if we're coming, you know, even if we're coming back home with next to nothing because the expense is so much, like let's just do this shit in a bus for the winter time.
Oh yeah.
People really
Yeah.
underestimate the cost of operations of a tour bus.
Oh, for real, dude. Like,
I have some buddies of mine. They used to play in a band called Battlecross. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
I've
them.
heard of them. Yeah.
And they went out on Mayhem Festival and they split a bus with another band. And when I went to Mayhem Festival and I hung out with them and stuff like that around the bus, and when they were going over the day to day operations on a bus, I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, today's market, you're lucky after everything's paid. If you can afford some Wendy's afterwards, people don't understand. Buy the t shirts, buy the CDs, get out and support because it is rough out there.
Well, and that's the thing. I think when so Battlecross, if I'm not mistaken, they were one of those bands. It was kind of like what around like 2008 to what probably like early 2010s. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And we were fortunate enough that like we were kind of right in the heyday of everything, where and we did really well on merch at that point too. I mean, we kind of had to at that point because like nothing else was paying us. So yeah, I mean, we came back home with something. It wasn't a whole lot, but I mean, like we were lucky to come back home with something at that point. Like it was a good time to be out doing what we were doing for our genre, our respective genre. I feel
Okay.
bad for a lot of the bands that like once that all started dying down, that were trying to make it in buses and like larger production scales, and it's like, dude, you guys got to dial the shit back some, man. Like you're not going to make any money. You're gonna end up burning yourself out and then not wanting to do the shit anymore.
Sure.
Now, do you have any famous stories of playing the venue Harpo's in Detroit? Everybody seems to have one Harpo story.
No, I mean nothing really as far as like good stories. Not at Harpo's. It sounds like a situation that would be outside of Harpo's, but we we played. It wasn't even bleeding through. I was filling it
Mhm.
on a guitar for 18 Visions. It was probably 2001, and we rolled up to this hotel to spend the night. Um, it's just outside of Atlanta because we were going to go to the Warped Tour the next day. So we're like, all right, let's get some sleep, go to this thing well rested. It's a day off. Let's go have fun, watch some bands, that are just completely different that we want to see. And we get there, and oh man, this was so fucked up, dude. Like it could have been way more fucked up, looking back at it. But so we get there, and it's just like this fucking giant party at this hotel. But like it's like a straight up hood party, right? So like we should have known like by seeing some of the shit that was going on in the parking lot, this might not have been the best place to stay. And I mean, 'cause these dudes were getting fucked up in the parking lot. You could see like some of them like fucking had weapons and shit in their hands, and we're like, oh yeah, this might not be a good idea. So we finally get up to our room. Um, this was before anybody really had cell phone. Like I think I had a cell phone at that point. I think maybe Brandon might have had one. And like I said, this was when I was playing with 18 Visions. So Mick decides he needs to use the payphone to people back home.
Oh
He
no.
goes down to the payphone by the lobby. We hear a knock at the door, and we think, oh, it's just Mick coming back. He's done. He's done with using the phone. And I think Brandon had answered the door. Yeah, it was Brandon actually. And like I hear these dudes talking, like and kind of yelling at him. I'm like, I was laying on the floor, like because we had to fucking Rochambeau for a bed spot. And I remember the guy yelling at Brandon. There was like 3 of them at the door, right? And like one of the dudes is holding a gun in Brandon's face, and his hand is like this, and we're like, oh, that's not good. Meanwhile, Ken loved AOL back then, dude. He fucking lived on AOL. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yeah.
The original like online messaging. Anyway, so he's got like a million fucking boxes up on AOL, like sitting at the fucking desk, and like he's just like oblivious to everything that's happening right now. Like this guy's telling us to get face down on the floor, and then I hear Brandon yelling like, "Ken, get on the fucking floor!" Because I saw that dude's hand shaking the way that it was, I was like, fuck, one of us is going to get shot, if not all of us, and we're going to die in this fucking room. And then Mick comes up while this is all happening. He's done using the phone, and they all get out of the room, and they're outside on the balcony arguing with Mick, and Mick's just like, they're asking, they're telling him, give me your fucking wallet, and like, he's all, dude, all I got in here is $1 and a fucking Utah driver's license. And, oh man, I miss Mick so much, dude. Fuck. That dude could make everybody laugh in any situation. And that was one of them, because like he's fucking telling this dude, like, I've just got $1, dude. You're gonna fucking rob me for $1. And so he finally gives him his fucking wallet. The guy's fucking run. And at that point, we're like, okay, do we call the cops or do we just get the fuck out of here? I think they might have called the cops as we were leaving, just because, like, if anybody else is trying to stay there, like, give them fair warning, dude, don't fucking so yeah, like, we ended up leaving, and I think we drove like, about 10 miles out just to get another hotel room in a spot that seemed safer. But man, you don't realize like how close you came to getting fucking shot until after something like that happens, and you remember like how the dude's hand was shaking, because those are the guys that like they panic and they pull the fucking trigger. Yeah. And we were just like, dude, and meanwhile, Brandon's like talking about how, so dude, I wanted so bad to just fucking like run across the room and fucking grab the dude's gun. I'm glad you fucking didn't, dude. One of us would have died. Oh man. Yeah,
he was on AOL AIM.
Fucking AIM, yeah, right? Oh, jeez. Yeah, that was an experience for sure.
Dang. And this was in Detroit or no?
No, this was like I said, it was just outside of Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
But it's like it like almost feels like something that would happen like in the Harpo's area.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember Harpo's employees telling us, like, if you guys are at a red light and there's people like hanging out in the intersections, just run the red light.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't stop.
What's funny about Harpo's is I didn't really get the gist of the neighborhood till I got in my later 20s, but because we used to go to Harpo's when I was in high school. It's the only place you could underage drink. But anyways,
I mean, how are they going to see you with a 20-foot high stage,
I had a buddy's grandmother who stayed probably 4 blocks up from Harpo's, right up the street.
Oh, wow.
And he was staying with her, and we'd go chill over at her house pregame and then walk up to Harpo's in the middle of the night. And it wasn't until I got older I was like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
It's probably not the smartest, but we did it like 100 sometimes for rock and metal shows. Hey, man, go to Chris's grandma's house, hang out there, have a beer, then walk up to Harpo's.
Mhm.
And it's funny, man, like, because I grew up in Southern California, like right outside of LA, right when that whole like Colors and Boys in the Hood things going on, those movies came out, and everybody wanted to be a Crip or a fucking Blood, mainly Crip, like down there in that area. But like growing up, at that time, being in high school, like I look back at some of the places I would, because it would get so hot that like we would go skateboard out at night in the summertime. We just go to well lit spots and fucking skate at night. But then I lived in a bad neighborhood, so I had to skate all the way across town on my own because nobody else that I skated with lived in that fucking area. So, dude, I used to get jumped all the time, man. Like fucking it, like yeah. You don't realize like until like years later, like, oh, that was a bad idea. That was a fucking terrible neighborhood. I should never have done that.
Oh yeah, there's man, that's definitely one of the toughest stories. So you said that was when you were living in Southern California. Was it
Yeah, yeah. It was
like
like the late '80s, early '90s.
dang? Oh yeah, so yeah, just right around those time those movies were coming
Yeah.
out too, is what you said. Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, definitely around that time. Oh man. So like okay, so basically with this, I do this sometimes too during these shows, Scott. So I usually try to compare like two different bands here, like what your opinion would be on it. So
Okay.
basically, I'm gonna say it kind of like I mean, who would you prefer over this? Like Suffocation or Deicide? Mhm.
Suffocation for sure.
Suffocation.
That's not even a question. I've never really been a big Deicide fan,
Hmm.
where like they just didn't have a whole lot to offer for me anyway. On like where I was at,
Hmm.
whereas Suffocation were just like, dude, everything they did was groundbreaking, man. Like right up until they broke up, like they were just getting better and better.
Hmm.
Um, when they came back finally, I'm not going to say it was bad. It wasn't bad by any means. In fact, like it's a lot better listening to it now than it was when I was listening to it when they first came back. So, um, I think everything they've done was
Hmm.
awesome. But like, dude, after Pierce from Within, and then you follow it up with Despise the Sun,
Hmm. Oh man.
like holy shit! Like there was nothing they could do at that point. I guess when they came back, that was gonna like top that.
Hmm. Yeah, that was. I'd have to say the first one I ever heard from them was the human waste. That like infecting the crypts, stuff like
Yeah,
that. When I first heard that tone and infecting the crypts, I was like, "Holy shit, man! This sounds so freaking heavy. What the hell is this?" And then after that, I just started like going into it. And I'm like, "Wow, this is so cool for Suffocation, man."
even the fast parts were heavy, dude. Like
Mm,
I'm one of those guys that like heavy to me is like breakdowns or something slow with like that
mm,
just
mm,
fucking crushing noise sound.
Mike
Like
Smith,
not
man,
fast, yeah,
just Mike
but
Smith on the drums was just that dude who was like, who's doing that? I think they said it best in Roadrunner United. Jason Sukoff, when they interviewed him, he's like, Mike Smith invented the blast beat. Then everybody like kind of took that style of drumming from him and Suffocation and just did it everywhere. But yeah, Suffocation for sure. I'm with you guys.
yeah, I'm gonna say Dave Koros was probably a better drummer than Mike Smith.
Yeah,
Yeah,
mm,
Koros when he played, like Mike Smith is fucking awesome. He's great, um, but and he hits hard. He hits like a fucking beast, right? But Dave Koros beats the shit out of his drums at that speed. It's like not even fucking humanly possible. Like some
mhm.
of the things when you watch him with how hard he's hitting.
Man. It's almost kind of like if you ever heard like the new like three piece Dying Fetus when they came back as that my God, like Trey Williams, my God, that guy's just so freaking quick, you
Yeah.
know.
And then
He's
who was that guy they had? Like they had that drummer that went off and did Misery Index afterwards. That guy was fucking awesome too.
Kevin Talley.
Yeah, yeah, Kevin
Yep.
Talley.
Hmm.
Fuck, that guy was great.
Hmm.
I
I know
see.
he
I
was in.
actually met him, Kevin Talley. He was playing drums for Battlecross on the Mayhem Festival.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
He was a super cool guy. Like I'm not like best friends with the guys in the band, but I know them and stuff like that. So when I was hanging out at their tent and by the bus and stuff, I forgot who was drumming with them at the time because sometimes in this genre of music, it can be hard to find a drummer. So they had Kevin Talley. And I've always heard the name, obviously Slayer and stuff like that. And he's kind of was like, don't want to disrespect him, rent a drummer for a minute. And I was like, oh shit, that's Kevin Talley. Super, super cool guy. He almost had this Keanu Reeves type vibe around him. He was just super cool and really nice and total nerd about metal and all things hard rock. But yeah, he was a super cool guy, but he plays insane.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, one drummer I like definitely want to mention that like even just blows me away to this day is George Collius from Nile, dude.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm just like, how? You know?
I think like one of my favorite guys, and I don't even like, I know he was having some health problems a while back, was Nick Barker that
Mm,
played for Cradle. He played for Demu. Um, he was going to play for Testament for a while, but I guess there was some immigration problems and they gave him the boot from the country.
mm.
But man, that dude, he's a big fucking guy, dude. And he's one of those guys also that like is just insane fast. And
Oh yeah.
his fills are so technical, but they're everything that he does is spot on.
Hmm.
Like
I
he
mean,
never misses anything.
listen to Dusk and Her Embrace. My God, he's all over the place on that album. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, it
There's a lot of
was.
those guys from overseas. I went and
Mhm,
seen Satyricon at Harpo's, and that
mhm,
was one of the first times that Frost was able to get a visa to come over to the States to play.
mhm,
So I got to meet both him and Satyr, and that was like it was mind blowing watching
mhm.
Frost play in person and stuff, and then getting to meet him. That guy is one of the softest spoken person in heavy metal.
Big.
You know, a lot of those guys from like Europe and like the Scandinavian scenes, a lot of those guys are really quiet.
Mhm.
I mean, he
Oh
was like
yeah.
really nice, but I felt like me talking to him, like being my normal Dan self. I'm like, God, I almost sound aggressive talking, and he was just like, "Hey, how you doing? You know, it's nice to meet you." Shook my hand, and we got a picture together, and we talked for like 20 minutes. And then Satir came up, and uh, they're wider than the background that you have on your wall. They are. That is legit without makeup on or nothing. I was like, wow. I feel if these guys sneeze, they're going to disappear.
Right, right. Like go out and get some sun, dude.
It's not a gimmick.
Yeah.
Another. We're all fans. But what was your moment? If you could look back and think about it, what was that rock star moment you had where you've met somebody that you've idolized or had an album you were like, holy shit, this is happening like at a festival or because you guys were touring it seems like around the world for like some time there. Was there a moment in a person that you met you were like, holy shit, this is real? And now I'm having morning coffee with them.
I mean, um, you know, there's a few that kind of stood out. Like I remember meeting Rob Halford on Ozfest. It's just like, and he knew who we were. It was like, fuck, man. Like I grew up listening to Judas Priest, you know, and then I remember, you know, meeting Slayer like on that first Ozfest that we did too. Like, you know, I met Carrie and his wife. His wife's a sweetheart. Like she's absolutely like one of the nicest people. And you know, she introduced me to Carrie. You know, we talked and stuff, and it was just cool because like they were probably one of the biggest influences on my playing, like out of anything. You know, like Slayer was was that band for me for a long time. Um, and then you know, I got to meet Bill Ward from Black Sabbath. Like that dude
Oh,
was
nice.
one of the most genuine, sweetest people ever. I'm not going to mention any names, but there was a few disappointing people too. You know, there's a few that were for sure like, dude, what are you doing, man? Like, you know, how can you act like that?
Hmm. Oh yeah. There was a story that I had. I remember there was way back in '98 during the Strangeland tours. It was the Soulfly Snot was supposed to be there, but apparently something had happened and they had to drop off the tour. And then was it Day in the Life? I think it was that was there, and also Head PE. My friend and I were sitting over by the bar at what was then State Theater, is now the Fillmore in Detroit.
Okay.
And Jared, MCUD as he was known at that time, was sitting at the bar. So we just keep talking to him. And then after the show, we met West Style, or Wesley Gear, as he's known, their guitar player. And he's sitting here yelling at cars outside because there was like these people that drove by in this big expensive Mercedes. They're sitting here doing all this kind of stuff like this, dancing all do like hip
Yeah.
hop rolling. Like you see Wesley turn around, yeah, nice car, you fucking preppy ass motherfucker. I'm like,
Wow.
whoa, I'm like in Detroit, dude,
Yeah.
what are you
Right.
doing? you
Yeah.
know?
That's just inviting all kinds of problems that you don't want for sure.
Yeah, yeah. That was, but yeah, the head PE guys were actually pretty cool though. You know what I mean? They were.
They're from like kind of down where I'm from, like in the IE and stuff, like
Mhm.
Southern California. I've never really like met them before, but yeah, I've heard, we had mutual friends and stuff. I've heard they're all really nice guys.
Oh,
I
all
hung out with
right.
Doyle from the Misfits, and he was not who I thought he was in like the nicest of ways.
Yeah.
My buddy ran sound for the venue, and I was up there hanging out with them after Doyle got done playing, and they didn't really have a road crew. It was the local venue, so I got to help wheel some of his cabs and all their equipment out there.
Oh,
And
awesome.
Doyle comes walking by, and he's still got his face paint on and his lock, but he's got a little dog, like a Chihuahua, like a
Yeah.
small dog, and he's sitting there holding his dog, and he looks over at me, and I'm like, wait a second, he's probably going to notice that I wasn't the people that helped loaded this shit in, and he's going to rip me up. And he looked over at me and he's got like that very Jersey accent. He's like, doing a good job. Thank you. Appreciate it. And I was like, I looked over and I'm like, oh, fuck, you're fucking huge.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
anyways, I kept going and loaded out. And then he sat there, coolest guy ever. Ended up taking a picture. Me and my wife got a picture with him and hung out with him. Super Jersey, like stereotype Jersey, but the nicest dude ever. And he
I
just had this little dog and he was petting his dog.
When he first did the Misfits sets with Danzig, like when they first started doing them again, long before Jerry like was playing with them. It was like 2006, I want to say, somewhere around there. Anyway, we were doing the first shows that the first reunion shows between Doyle and Danzig, and like Vegas we did, and then we did one in LA at the Wiltern, and like I talked to him a couple times at those shows, and he was just a sweetheart, man, total sweetheart of a guy.
But he's like
Definitely.
so intimidating.
Oh, for sure.
Mhm.
Like
Like at
I
that age, holy
was
shit!
wheeling
How
his
do you
caps
stay like
down.
looking like that at that
Brought to you
age?
by, well, I don't know who we're brought to you by, but okay.
Liquid death. Don't sue us.
Liquid Death. There you go. Gosh. Oh man. So, one of the things that I've always asked too in this is guilty pleasures. Like what is your biggest guilty pleasure? Like who? Like what artist? What music? Mhm.
It probably wouldn't have been a guilty pleasure had it not been for how much the dude has been sticking his foot in his mouth for the past recent years, I guess. Morrissey. I
Morrissey?
love
Right on.
everything the dude has done, like, but just some of his beliefs that have gotten out, and it makes it really hard to listen to him at times too now because of some of the shit that's coming out of his mouth. But yeah, I've always loved like everything that he's done.
Right on.
So
Right
I
on.
guess it's guilty, but not guilty. It's only guilty just because of like I said, some of his views.
Mhm.
I can't align myself with any of that shit.
Right. Well, actually, the one thing I would say for myself, if there was, like I said, I wouldn't necessarily call it guilt in that sense. I would say that I'm not afraid to admit it, but I am kind of a fan of the K-pop group Blackpink.
I don't, I've never heard their music. My kid, like, she was kind of, I guess she was like, I would have never heard of had it not been for my kid. And I don't
Mhm.
know that she even ever really listened to them either. It's weird. So I'm not sure why
Mhm.
she ended up, talking about it with me. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think it was one of those things where like, it was right when there was a lot of stuff going on around how they treat some of those kids on the road,
Mhm.
like to make them stay skinny, like so you can only eat fucking ice or something, just
Mhm.
extreme shit. And it's like, wow.
Yep. If
But
you
yeah,
see
I don't
some of
know.
them, you'll understand.
Yeah, yeah, that's I know. I mean, it's just wild what they make some of these kids go through.
Oh
Shit,
yeah.
I guess for me, I wouldn't even say I'm ashamed of it, but I love Justin Timberlake and Lady Gaga.
Mhm.
And if I'm ever writing something on guitar and I get like a roadblock where when I write guitar, I'm always looking for some sort of melody to
Yeah,
write. And there'll be a time where it's like, fuck, I'm stuck on put on the JT, man, right now. And I'll go
Yeah.
out to the living room and put on some Justin Timberlake or the Fame Monster album by Lady Gaga, where they have the really
dude,
big pop choruses and melodies. And then I'll come back and be like, fuck, now let's write something metal.
Lady Gaga is that she's fucking talented, man. Like she,
Mhm.
I guess she's one of the few out of that genre that still writes all of her own shit. Like she doesn't have a team of writers, and she's just her whole vibe, man. Like everything just seems really fucking cool about her. Like
Mhm.
I think it's pretty cool.
Alejandro, man, that song has every melody and everything you want in a song, man. I was like, oh shit, oh yeah,
And
love the
I've
guy.
heard, and I read something to the effect of, I think it was when Iron Maiden had released one of their newer albums a few years back. She was one of the ones who waited in line for it.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah, she like camped out and like waited. I know I read something about it. I'm not exactly sure how long ago it was, but yeah, I know that she did something with Metallica too in the Grammys. I remember she did
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that, and that was because I've heard she's like a straight up metalhead too. You know
Yeah,
what I
the
mean?
Grammys fucked that up.
Mhm.
That should have been so much better, and it shouldn't have happened how it happened on the
Mhm.
Grammys. The technical issues, I know technical issues happen, but
Mhm.
oh, the Metallica guys loved the performance, but they weren't happy with the technical shit. I don't know if it was one or the other. They couldn't hear each other in the
Mhm.
monitors or something like that in the in ears, and it was just But yeah, the Grammys. Go
Of
figure.
all the places for like something like that to happen too, right?
Seems like this, but
Now, Scott, I do have a
Mhm.
question. Um, have you've seen the resurgence of all the bands from your time, Shadows Fall, God Forbid, all the guys that you guys kind of came up together, they're kind of coming back and doing shows and putting out new records. Is there any chance with the Bleeding Through camp that maybe like some of these other bands that I mentioned that there might be something in the future or some one-off shows or something, or is it just done?
I'm going to say it's probably just done.
Okay.
To be honest, what I will say though is a lot of so I've been in contact with the basically the original lineup of Bleeding Through very recently. Um, we've all expressed an interest to play with each other again, um, and it's just and I kind of initiated it too. We were going to try and find another vocalist and just see, write some songs, see what happens from there. And then it's just like my life has just been since then over the past couple months. It's like one stupid event after another. Like, I was telling Colin earlier, like that, I just had a bout with kidney stones a couple weeks ago.
Ooh.
Yeah. And it's not my first time. I've had them before. Like I love my coffee too much. And that's one of the things that sets me off of those every like 3 or 4
Oh.
years. I know it sucks. Um, And then a couple weeks before that, like my cat that I've had for 17 and a half years, he was born under my kitchen sink. He passed away. Um, it's just been like, and then before that, like we had to completely retool the lineup for my current project, The Suffering, because, our guitar player had left. We were just trying out a new drummer, and it's just like, it's been a lot, man. So like, I'm gonna try my best to make it happen. Hopefully sooner than later, but we'll see where it goes.
What has been with this year? I swear, everybody I talk to, I don't know if it's just because we're getting fucking old, but I feel like this year has been so horrible for everybody on so many fronts.
Yeah.
Besides the stupid presidential election going on,
Oh,
this year has been shitty. My car that was almost paid off, my Jeep, I had maybe less than 8 months to pay off on it, and it was mine. Caught on fire on I-94 coming out of Detroit and burnt down to the ground. But there were no signs of it going. It just started smoking, and we pulled over, and it just went up and burnt down. All right, cool. No problem. So I had to wait for a minute for the insurance company to make me rich. Cool.
yeah.
So that was that. Besides all the other stuff, then probably a couple weeks ago, somebody road raged my wife off the road. And
Wow.
they came in and they cut her off, passing her, and clipped the whole front of the car, brake checked her, and chased her for like 3 or 4 miles down the highway. She was running for her life on the phone with 911. Well, they got away.
I get, man. I can get road rage, but like not to the point where I'm gonna like follow somebody around or like fuck with them like that. Like that's just too much.
And it was wild because the windows in my wife's car are not tinted, so it's like you are literally chasing around this little 4'11" fucking girl.
Yeah.
And she's
Yeah, so
like,
what are you gonna do if she stops? Are you gonna beat up this smaller woman? Like, come on.
Then what else happened this year? My 2 lizards died. My bearded dragons died like back to back because they were sick and we didn't know. Collins had stuff. Man, it's like fuck this year.
I completely relate to that. This year has been pretty fucked up, man. Like a lot more than like I can really put into words, I guess. Like it's been fucked up.
And then it's been the political year, so like I don't get any sleep because out here they've been calling my phone religiously and it's local number, so I just answer the phone. And when they're asking who I'm voting for, I said, "Listen, I'm voting for Bob Vila."
There you go.
Bob Vila, man, leave me alone.
Wasn't that the home repair guy?
Yeah, the sold house, Bob Vila.
Yeah. Like the old Sears home repair guy or something.
Right,
like that.
Right.
Everybody's parents watched Bob Vila. Like that, my dad watched the shit out of Bob Vila back in the day. And then he'd turn over to me. You know that bike ramp you want built? Just learn from old Bob.
God, man, no, this year's just been. Oh my God, I'm kind of glad it's gonna be over pretty soon. You know what I mean? Hopefully, hopefully very soon everything will be back to normal or whatever the hell normal is. To be honest with you,
normal don't exist anymore. The older we get, normal doesn't exist.
It's funny you say that, dude. Like I just feel like ever since the end of 2018, 2019, right around there, it just seems like everything went fucking bananas, man. Like I don't understand. Like nobody can function anymore. Nothing, like it's like everybody forgot how to do anything.
Or to be nice.
It's so weird.
Exactly. Yeah. There's times
the
where
amount of hostility I see from people out and about over regular, everyday stuff. And I don't know if this is just because I'm married and have kids now and I'm way more relaxed, but I'm seeing people get so angry over the littlest things. And I feel like, since the pandemic era, it's like everybody's like one crack away from just blowing up and losing it on somebody. And I'm like, hey, man, we're all fucking people here. We're just all trying to use the self-checkout. This ain't necessary.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I just want to get my Pepsi and get the hell out of here.
Right. Even a wife said to me, she said, babe, she's like, You're very how I say I'm Irish, so I have a very short temper with certain crap. She's like you're she's like you're like the peacekeeper everywhere now.
Yeah, I try and avoid all that shit now, man. It's really hard to also because, like you said, man, you see it everywhere now. I don't understand why people get so bent out of shape like over the stupidest shit.
It's I don't know. I mean, it's really really hard to explain all this kind of stuff too, because I see it a lot too, and especially with the type of job that I do,
Yeah,
it's very hard to kind of deal with some things, with people,
yeah.
especially when you're customer facing all day.
Oh yeah.
God, what was this? I had it happen up the road to me at Speedway,
Mhm.
and the wife will hear this down the road and get. But I was up at Speedway and I was in line, and there was a guy in front of me, and there was a older lady that worked behind the counter, and this guy was just either super intoxicated or something. He was just being a dick. Like I don't want to go into what he said, but there was like that point in line where it's like, all right, dude, like respect for women not having it. So I like walked up and I was like, hey man, are you all right? Da 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 da. He went on his shit. So I took his Arizona tea and I threw the shit on the ground. I said, man, get the fuck out of here. Go home now. Bye.
Yeah.
And he got the hit and he left. And she's like, oh, thank you. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of a little rank, man. I'm like, I'll pay for the 99 cent Arizona.
It just sucks that it had to come down to that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
Yep,
I don't understand. People just have no chill anymore.
And
it's
speaking of the pandemic, I feel like that's messed with a lot of touring stuff.
Mhm.
I've noticed that there's a lot of big tour packages. And Detroit used to be like a prime stop. If I looked and seen that somebody was coming to Ohio where they're coming through that loop, we would always get a spot on the tour. So many places are passing over us right now here in the Metro Detroit
Mhm.
area. This is like since the pandemic. So I don't know if it's a money thing. I don't know if it's the booking agent that sees maybe Detroit is too expensive, so they'll do two shows in Ohio.
It could be like all the above, and then more even to factor in. It's a weird like environment out there now.
Shit,
But
man, because I've seen you guys a couple times way back in the day in high school and stuff like that. All the tours were getting booked, and obviously it's a different economic standpoint right now with touring and
yeah,
stuff like that. But it seems like just Detroit gets passed over. I mean, King Diamond's playing here in 2 days, but
He's here in
it's a
Phoenix too,
key
in
spot on
December
the
2nd.
tour. It's a weekday, so we're not one of the
So
prime stops.
no, no. But dude, it's freaking King Diamond. Come on, man.
yeah.
You know, you know. But it's oh God, I'm talking about asking. So like, what is probably the most fucked up thing you'd ever seen like in the crowd at shows?
In the crowd. Well, there was so when we did.
Mhm.
Oh, shit, I can't remember what tour it was. So we played. It was somewhere. It was in Cincinnati at Bogarts, and
Mhm.
one of the most fucked up things was like we had friends of ours out in the pit, like, and that was when some of our guys were affiliated with Courage Crew,
Mhm.
and that's basically where Courage Crew kind of is at its biggest, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, anyway, like so some of the security guys started roughing around like a bunch of kids and stuff there. Then they started like roughing up other people. Like our friends got involved, and it just ended up like where so our friends were like starting to pound the shit out of some of these security guys because they weren't doing
Mhm.
their jobs right. They weren't doing it properly. They were just being way too aggressive with people. And then one of the security guys broke out with a knife, and like two of our friends got stabbed while we were playing. Like we're playing during all this, and we didn't even really
Oh
see it.
no.
And then like so finally we stopped playing.
Mhm.
We finished up a song, and then we start to see like what's going on. Like we get out on our bus. One of our friends who was the singer for this band Suffocate Faster out of Cincinnati,
Mhm.
he'd ended up getting stabbed like 3 or 4 times. He almost died. He was on our bus. We like duct taping his fucking knife wounds. Then another one of our friends. Um, he ended up getting stabbed a bunch too. Like, they were both on our bus, and it was just fucked up, man. Like why are you guys breaking out knives? I understand you were getting your asses handed to you, but like, bro, you weren't doing your jobs effectively. You were like fucking roughing people up.
It's,
That's insane.
Yeah, yeah,
this was a Bogarts in Cincinnati.
yeah, yep.
Good God. Oh my God.
I've heard some stuff
That's
about Bogarts through the grapevine
Yeah,
about it. I
yeah.
heard
It's
it's
one of
kind of
those
the
spots.
most. It's a nice place to play. Like people like Bogarts, but it is very mismanaged.
It
Mhm.
is, and it's also a very tense scene. Like, like it's never been like a very united scene. I guess you could say it's always been kind of, you know, people tend to take things a little to the extreme.
Gotcha. Mhm. So I mean, with that, to piggyback off of that last thing, what was like the like probably the most sketchiest venue you guys have ever played in? Mhm.
Oh God, there's so many. There's so many.
Mhm.
I remember we played a junkyard in Denver, and it was billed as the Denver hardcore homecoming.
Mhm.
Um, One girl came dressed, and I know this girl too. Like, she came dressed in a prom dress that she made out of saran wrap. Um, and there was like the people that own this place. They had their kid out there. Like, the kid couldn't have been more than like 10 years old, and he's got a bottle of whiskey in his hand, smoking cigarettes, and just like,
Mhm.
what the fuck? It was a weird environment. So I mean, like, there was that. Like, we've played like, there's a place here in Richmond. It was our first show in Northern California, called Burnt
Mhm.
Ramen. Um, it was right in one of the sketchiest parts of like Richmond, which is, it's not uh, it's not one of the safest places to be at. Obviously, Detroit Harpo's, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll never
Uh,
get back in there now.
oh man, yeah. If I was still touring, I don't know if Harpo's is one of
Mhm.
the places I'd want. I would probably be like, no, let's just book St. Andrews.
Yep.
Something cool and safe.
Yeah.
Um,
Because St. Andrews is yeah, St. Andrews I know is like an old church of some sort, it seems
yeah,
like. And then when I was there to see Within Temptation of all people, believe it or not, of all bands, believe it or not, that they played in that tiny venue. I'm thinking, dude, a huge European band that sells out stadiums in Europe, but they're in this tiny, tiny venue in Detroit. That's so crazy.
yeah, and like I mean, I've seen a lot of people packed in that place, man. It's just a fun fucking place to play.
St. Andrews? Oh,
But
oh,
yeah, I mean, like, we've played so many sketchy venues. It's like it's so hard to just narrow down like some of the worst.
mhm. I've actually wondered this because I've seen this in a few so and like some like the Trust Kill stuff and everything like that too. I think it was Barry You're Dead. It was playing at this place called Chain Reaction. I mean, and I hear a lot of people talk about it, from different different bands from the hardcore scene in California. I mean, have you played there? And like, what's it like? What's the big draw to it?
Chain reaction.
Mhm.
It's like, I guess, for lack of a better comparison, I would say chain reaction to Orange County is kind of what CBGB's was to New York.
Okay.
Um, it's just a really good place to go see shows. The venue is awesome. The staff is awesome. The layout of the building is awesome. So it just all those things combined make for like a really, really great show. Um, the scene there, like, I don't know what it's like now because it's been so long since I've been there. But I remember when the pandemic was still new, that they were at risk of like having to shut down, and everybody came together, man. To like Black Craft Cult Clothing Company,
Oh,
they
yes.
they like everybody started making merch and everything to like donate to keep the place going, and it's still going. Like, everybody got together, they saved it, and like,
Hmm.
it's just one of those spots. It's home. That was always
Mhm.
like a second home to Bleeding Through, like that and Showcase Theater. But Showcase, the city just shut that place down. Like they wanted nothing to do with that anymore.
Uh,
Weren't you guys endorsed by Coffin Case at one point in time, Scott?
No, no,
I thought you guys were endorsed.
no. But I wouldn't mind that right now because, as you can see behind me, like it's been a real pain in the ass finding cases for those things.
Enki, man, get the Enki cases.
They're expensive and like it's just a lot. Like I'd rather just have a single dedicated BC
Single.
Rich case to it.
I recently got an Enki myself, and in a Gator Volt, because I got like 8 or 9 guitars, and it just got to the point to where it's like I like a single case too, but I'm like, yeah, I always end up taking 2 with me. So
Yeah.
I just
Well,
want
you
to
have
have
to. You always got to have a backup.
yeah. So I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna get volts.
Oh man, that's so. I mean, with the two guitars that you have behind you right there. I mean, have you used any of those on any of the albums or anything like that? Hmm.
With the Suffering, yeah. Like the 3 song demo, I used the black one, and then the record that we put out, I used the red one on that. And
Right
those
on.
are both my main guitars for the Suffering.
There you go. And the and as I told you before, how I'd first heard of you guys on that 2002 Hellfest DVD. Um, it looked like you were using like a BC Rich, like it looks like you were using like a Warlock during that or something like that. Do you still have that?
I was hoping that I did. Okay, so I ended up giving it to my dad. He wanted something that I played because when he saw that we were like doing well,
Mhm.
and then came out to Ozfest and came out to some shows, he was like, "Whoa, this is so fucking cool! Like you're finally doing what you always wanted to do, like, and you're you're supporting yourself on this."
Mhm.
And he was super proud, and he was buying all the magazines and stuff all the time, and like that we were in, um, and then he asked me for one of my guitars that I actually used on stage and stuff, and I ended up giving him that. And I guess he fell on some hard times. Uh, he he had some severe health problems like about a year or two ago. He told me that the thing was like, because he kept it in his basement, that the neck was all warped and frets were popping. I'm like, no, that doesn't happen that easily. I didn't tell him that, but I just kind of went along with his story, like, and I just wish he would have told me, like, we fell on hard times. I would have just bought it back off of him. But yeah, that was my BC Rich. That was the Warlock. You know, I guess in retrospect, like I hope he got more out of it than what he's told me he did, because um, I just feel like if it was going to go that way, I wanted to help out the most for them.
That was
Definitely.
Ozfest. When you brought up Ozfest, that was Ozfest '06, right?
Well, we did 04 and 06.
Yes. All right. See, because that's where, because I was at both. I went to '04, '06, and then '07. I'm like, I felt like I've seen you guys twice on Ozfest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But '06 was that year where uh everybody was on it, man. Like I feel like
Mhm.
everybody.
that was 04.
'04.
Yeah, when it was Slayer, Sabbath, Judas Priest, and then the whole side stage was like a who's who of everybody that was coming up in that at that time.
I'm
It was
getting
like
freaking
Every
old
Time I
because
Die, Unearth, Throwdown, Atreyu, like
yeah.
Walls of Jericho.
Down, man.
What, it was '04, man. It's yeah, man. It was like I remember that. I was like, man, I was so stoked over the second stage more so than the
Genuinely.
It
main
was a
stage.
literal like hardcore summer camp, man. It was so much fun, but it was also pretty brutal too. Like I had a lot of shit going on that tour. Um, and you don't really get a whole lot to do. When your bus is parked there, you have to stay there the whole day. The buses are kept there, and um, you get a little too much time to think and to be bored. And some people like can handle it, other people can't. Um, and then you get some people that cause a lot of trouble because of it too, because they're so fucking bored. Like so, it was one of the coolest, but also like kind of hardest tours to do.
Okay.
I
Did
assume
you get
that's why
to?
Pantera was only invited to do it once if it's being told like that.
Yeah. Did you guys ever
Yeah,
get to meet? Did you ever get to meet like Sharon or Ozzy or anything like that?
yeah, yeah. I never met Ozzy personally,
Hmm.
but I met Sharon. In fact, our merch guy at the time, he was kind of dating Kelly off and on.
Okay.
Um, it was, I mean, we'd like some of us had been to the Osbournes' house a few times. You know, it was rare to see Ozzy there, but
Hmm.
you'd always see like Sharon and Kelly and Jack. And,
Right on. And that was the old mansion off of Doheny in Hollywood, or no?
yeah, over in Beverly Hills. Yeah,
Right. Right on. Right on. I think that was the one that was on the Osbournes show, if I'm
yeah,
not mistaken.
yep,
Yeah, that's the one. Yep. Okay. Right on. Right on. Man. So like, and I remember. Um, so you said you were at '06, right? As a last one
yeah.
for like Ozfest '06, because I had the DVD for Ozfest '06. I didn't see you guys on it though. But I saw that Wicked Wisdom was on there, and a couple other people were on there for the '06.
That would have been, I think, 2005, maybe.
Was it five? Okay.
Wicked Wisdom, I believe. Well, maybe 2005 or 2007. I don't know. They weren't on that
Okay.
year. That's the
They
one
were on
with
that year.
Jada Pinkett Smith, right?
That is. Yep.
Okay, so that was 2005 because Bury Your Dead was on that too.
Very dead. Okay.
Yeah,
They were on that.
I remember
Okay.
they were hanging out with Will Smith all the time.
Oh man.
I'd see like Mark and those guys posting like photos and videos and stuff all the time on MySpace of
Mhm.
them hanging out with Will Smith and stuff, and that's fucking cool, man.
That's cool. Oh man. So it's like because when you're saying like sometimes people can do things when they're that bored. I mean, one thing that comes to mind is I think it was at 99 or 98, maybe one of the Ozfests, Lynn Straight, when Limp Bizkit was on stage and he was receiving fellatio on top of a toilet, on top of some big giant toilet. Yep.
Yeah, that's a little extreme.
A little bit, yeah. And then it was, because I mean, from what I've seen from interviews and stuff like that, a lot of people saying that Lynn Straight was one heck of a character at one point when he was alive.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard he was definitely a character.
Hmm.
I mean, I'd never met him or anything, so I really don't know. But I mean, like, we've had kind of mutuals that, um,
But new. Hmm.
and people they've always said he was just like a really nice dude, but a total character.
Hmm. Right
That's like
on.
Alexi Leo from Children of Bodom, God rest his soul. I got to hang out with him twice. The first time I got to hang out with him actually for like an hour or two. And we shared our fair share of cocktails and stuff and talk, but nicest guy ever. And then it was just looking back on it, could kind of see what would ultimately become his cause of death. But super, super nice guy. I have a bunch of stuff that he autographed for me, me just being like a punk 16, 17-year-old kid. And he autographed a bunch of stuff.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah,
this is at Harpo's.
and that's the kind of shit that you never forget. You
Man.
hold on to that stuff, and it just means the world to you.
And it was like,
Hmm.
it wasn't just 20 minutes. It was like an hour, almost 2 hours of just me and him just bullshit and talking. Same with the Trivium guys. The Trivium guys are some of the nicest guys I've ever met.
I don't think I've ever met them, but I know that Ryan from Bleeding Through, he played in that band with Howard Jones for a while. With
Oh, yeah.
I believe the drummer for Trivium was playing in that band.
Blood
God,
has
what
been
is
shed.
that band called? I can't think.
Oh, shit, I can't remember their name either.
It wasn't Blood has been shed.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't Blood Has Been Shed, but like it was Howard from
Howard. Hmm.
from Blood Has Been Shed and Killswitch. He
Hmm.
was singing, and then it was Francesco from All Shall Perish playing guitar.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Light the Torch, I believe, is what they were called.
Light Torch. Okay.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
Dang.
Man, getting old.
Yeah.
Taking forever to remember
All the stuff
shit.
that yeah, all the stuff that we were that we were jamming, remember at my house, Dan. It was like, all those bands and stuff like that. I'm like, my God, dude, a lot of them are like our age. And now it's some of them are not even around anymore, which is horrible.
Our age or older. So now I like putting on my playlist when I take the kid to school in the morning.
Oh no.
I'm so old, man. It's like I just fuck. It kind of blows my mind that like I'm still listening to this shit like at my age. Like I'm gonna be in less than 3 weeks. I'll be 52. So
Man,
Yeah,
that's
I put on what was it? God, was it some In Flames? And God, what I can't think of what album it was off the top of my head. And Colony. There we go. Sorry, I wasn't going to let it get me. Colony.
that was
I
the
put
last
it
record
on.
that I enjoyed from them. Yeah.
I'm pulling up to the kid's school loop to drop him off, and he's like, "Dad, can you turn down your music? You're embarrassing me. It's old." I said, "You son of a bitch, go to school."
right. In Flames? How can In Flames be embarrassing, man? Come
It's like mine and my wife's favorite band together, and I looked over at her and I was like, "That's fucked up."
on. Oh
Oh,
man.
my shit old.
Jesus. I don't know. Well, I mean, nowadays though, it just seems like a little. I've been noticing different shifts in like musical tastes and whatnot. So it just seems like, now that I see a lot of kids are into a lot of the more, um, you know, I guess you can say manufactured kind of things now. Um, it just is like to me, I'm kind of like, man. So now I know what it like. Now I know what it feels like to be like to feel ancient. In that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. My kid is 14, and she's like, she's into a lot of the same shit that we are. Like we kind of brought her up right. She listens to not a whole lot of metal, but we took her to see her favorite band a couple of years ago was like Ghost.
Okay.
So
I love
we
Ghost.
we I love Ghost. They're like I don't care what people say, they're awesome. Um, and they put on a fucking awesome show too. So we surprised her. We didn't even tell her that we were taking her to see Ghost. We told her like I was going to buy it like a pedal or some shit like off of Facebook Market. So we drove up there. We get there and she's like, "What? There's so many people here. Like, what's going on?" She's all, "Wait, didn't you say Ghost was playing up here like soon?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't think this is it." And when we finally got out of the car, we let her know like, "Okay, you caught us. We're going to see Ghost." And she was in tears, man. She was like crying.
Oh, yeah.
That was her first real show, and like I remember when we got out, like she's just telling me, "Thank you guys. Like this was like the best night of my life."
That's
And
awesome.
so she's into some pretty cool shit. We got
Ghost has one of the best stage productions that I've seen in
for
years.
real, dude. For real, yeah.
And I was blown away because I love all their music and everything that they're about. But me and the wife looked at each other and I was like, dare I say it? And she looked over at me. I was like, this was almost a better stage production than Slipknot. And I'll fight people on that.
Yeah.
And
And then
see
people,
him playing arenas now, man. That's just wild.
and then the thing that gets me too is that I heard somebody, because I had a Ghost t-shirt on, and somebody's like, oh, dude, that is the most sissiest rock and roll metal music. And I was like, if you actually educate yourself, I'm like, a lot of the shit that Tobias Forge is singing about and the themes and stuff, I'm like, it's like borderline black metal content material. It's just put with more of a rock and roll with a splash of metal and the big pop choruses and stuff.
And it's not supposed to be tough. It's not supposed to be brutal. It's just supposed to be catchy rock.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I love it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And that's exactly what it is. It's catchy rock. It's awesome.
They're actually
Mhm.
going on tour here coming up into the new year, so I think that'll be the one show that I'm definitely going to be going to.
Oh,
Is
for
Ghost.
sure. Yeah. I'm probably gonna end up taking my kid to that for sure.
I think I'm going to bamboozle my Catholic mom and say, "Hey, come with us to a concert." Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. So on that note, it definitely has been an awesome night here for this guy. Again, thank you so much for joining us, Scott. And always guys remember
Uh-oh.
to subscribe, everything like that. And if you like this interview, let us know if you want us to bring Scott back
Yeah,
on or anything like that. And again, thank you, Scott, so much for coming through here. Always stay
dude.
metal, man. All
Thanks for having me, man. That was fun. It was cool to just sit and just like, kind of shoot the shit with you guys, you know?
Thank you for
Definitely.
coming on, man. I appreciate it. I was excited
Absolutely.
about this one.
All
Yeah,
right.
it was definitely a good time. I'll definitely like just let me know if you want me back on and I'm there.
All right, man. Definitely.